to The Art of Adventure. This is episode 297 with Garrison Cohen. The Art of Adventure is the podcast where we look at adventure, entrepreneurship, peak performance, metaphysics, and human potential. I'm your host, lead explorer and guide, Derek Loudermilk, and you can find the show notes over at derekloudermilk.com. And this episode is, we've basically taken a month off, sort of unplanned because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but now we're back on track and super excited. We've got a whole bunch of great shows to roll out for you in the month of May 2020. And I will also be doing a countdown this month. Every day on my Instagram, I'll be sharing one of the best adventure story episodes from these 300 episodes. And we're counting down to 300. This is 297. So 300 is coming right up. And we're also putting together a book of the best adventure stories. And I'll do a little bit of analysis as well. You know, I'll break down how to be a professional adventurer. I've been wanting to do this for a while, so I'm super excited about that. All right, now let's go to today's episode. And what do you think when I say the phrase, we speak ourselves into the world? This is something that my guest, Garrison Cohen, says during this episode. And he talks about the impact of the stories that we tell, impact on ourselves when we come to own our stories, and when somebody listens and emotionally engages in our story and reconsiders what is possible for themselves or what is possible for the world based on the stories that we tell. So Garrison is here. He's been on the show many times before, a friend of the show, and he's going to talk about how he's created this whole business, this whole structure around helping people tell better stories. So whether this is a TED talk or a CEO giving a speech, how to really tap into who you are and tell your personal story. So part of this episode will actually, he'll go through part of his process with me and ask me a few questions and start to dig into better ways that I could tell my origin story. And that'll sort of give you an idea of how he works and how you can do this for yourself. And this is just such a cool example of a new business model, a new idea. I've never heard of anybody doing something like this before. And so it's a great example of a way that you can create something that's never been done before. And he talks about using story and getting to the edge of your comfort zone. And what is the story that you're really here to tell? You know, the seminal work, the reason why you're on the planet. And a lot of times that's at the edge of your comfort zone. And so he helps people get there and actually tell this much more impactful story. So without further ado, here is Garrison Cohen. Garrison, welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. It's been a minute.
Yeah, I was just looking up your original two episodes. This is the third time you've been on the show. Your original two were back at episode 119, 134. And what I think is really cool is that we now have this like public record of the evolution of, you know, what we're talking about and your business evolution. So I wanted to have you on to experience and share this process of what you're doing, helping speakers. And I know you explain it way more eloquently than I do, but it would be helpful for actually me and the listener to, you know, draw the line of how the current work that you're doing came about, how you arrived, both you personally and how you developed the process itself.
Yeah, perfect. I was sitting here and thinking this to myself, and this is the first time I've actually put it this way, which is that my first ever public speaking experience was worse than most people's worst fantasies about what could happen and go wrong in their first public speaking experience.
Oh my gosh, did you get beat up?
Almost. Yeah, I was a freshman in high school. I was given a subject for my first oral report in front of class. And, you know, we're looking, this is like the mid 80s in Boston. And first of all, I was given the subject of the AIDS epidemic, which by itself was a really edgy, charged topic to even talk about in a suburb of Boston that's already like a pretty homophobic place to begin with. And I grew up in a generation of bullies where the upper class and the lower class were all afraid of my class all the way through school. And I was in the middle of it. So here I am as this, over the top, empathic kid where I could feel everything that everyone was feeling, including everything that everyone was trying not to feel, being totally overwhelmed in this like bully world and having to give an oral report on the most charged topic they could have picked. So there I am. It's Monday morning.
Oh my goodness.
I spent all week before working on it. I didn't know how to organize it. I didn't know how to speak it. I had my little cue cards. It's late June before the end of the year, so it's really hot. The windows are closed. I'm already sweating. My heart's beating out of my chest. And I'm doing my best to give this oral report in front of the room. And in the very front row, in the very first desk in front of me, is this kid who's a huge bully. And he was having a full-on out loud conversation with the kid at the desk next to him in the middle of my oral report. So I kindly ask him to stop talking. And he turns his attention on me and starts baring his fist and telling me how he's going to beat the shit out of me after class.
Oh my gosh.
During my oral report. So I'm being threatened with violence in the middle of my oral report. And then I started to notice, if you remember those, in the old TVs where there would be like sort of the black and white fuzz between channels, I started to notice that around the corner of my eyes. And it's slowly like creeping in and creeping in and creeping in until I'm just looking through this teeny little hole that's getting smaller and smaller. Next thing I see are all my cue cards just like flipping up in the air. I feel the impact of the ground. Now I'm looking up at the ceiling, completely dazed. I don't even know what's going on. And I hear the teacher exclaim, "Oh my gosh, can two boys help him get to the nurse's office?" Next thing I know, I'm being dragged down the hall by my wrists with two boys from the class laughing their heads off the entire way, all the way to the nurse's office.
Okay, I'm laughing too, but I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh man.
I know. No, that's all right. Your laughter it brings it all right back. Thank you. No, I'm joking. But, that was my first public speaking experience. And it was kind of amazing what happened after that, because my mother had heard some radio interview with a woman who had created some camp. And all my mom knew was that all she got from it was that it had something to do with more confidence for kids. So she sent me to it. What she didn't realize was that this woman, her name is Bobby DePorter, she was at the epicenter of all of these underground communities that no one would hear the names of for another decade or so. And the names of these communities were things like neurolinguistic programming, accelerated learning, embodiment, nonviolent communication, emotional intelligence, all of these different communities. And she had brought together the leaders of these different communities to be a part of this 10-day summer program and just completely school us on how to know ourselves, how to understand ourselves, how to understand how our brain works, how our emotions work, how our bodies work, how to set goals. We were doing, ropes courses and board breaking and dancing and writing and just all of these. It was just this full car wash of amazingness. And I fell in love with it. And I wanted to be on staff. I wanted to be a part of these people. And so I applied, and they said, "We're sorry, you're not quite ready for it yet." I was heartbroken. So I just went for a second year as a student. But then the third year, I finally got accepted as like the most junior of staff. And over the next several years, just worked my way up until I was actually one of the people leading the programs and being flown to places like Singapore to lead this program for, the children of the entrepreneurs organization out there. And this summer program was called Super Camp, actually became an incubator for some of the best speakers and presenters in the world. Tony Robbins was a facilitator at Super Camp before anyone even knew his name. And they would regularly seek out people who had been voted teacher of the state for the year in the state that they taught in. And those people would come in and they would learn all of these amazing high-level skills and then just go off into the world to create amazing things and be, really big speakers or facilitators. So I did that for several years. And by the time I came to the end of that, I had made a friend of mine there at one of our trainings who had been speaking at colleges, and he had grown his college speaking business so big that he couldn't take any more speaking opportunities. And he saw me speak and really liked my style and asked me if I wanted to work with him. So I started speaking at colleges and found that with everything that I had learned through Supercamp, especially being very empathic, I could keep an audience on the edge of their seat for an hour and 45 minutes easily. And if I found the audience, just their attention sort of like slipping a little bit, I could adjust myself and bring them like right back. So I was doing that for audiences of up to like 2,500 for almost 2 hours and just keeping them right there with me the entire time. And it just became this very natural thing that just became like surfing this incredible wave of energy and creating joy and education and inspiration and having audiences say like, oh my God, I never thought about it like that before. That's so amazing. So first of all, I mean, it's just, even as I tell that story, it's kind of amazing to be like, wow, talk about humble beginnings to, speaking on these huge stages with thousands of people.
What's really intriguing for me about that is that you found that camp in the first place. It's like the perfect thing for you. And all of, your mom just was like, oh, just go to this thing. That's super cool.
Mm-hmm. It is. That could be a whole other podcast episode of the ways like I've like threaded the needle of possibility in so many times in my life. Just like the perfect opportunity showed up in the most obscure way. And I was just able to just sort of slip through like that teeny little opening and just go into a whole other world, which actually kind of applies to the subject of our conversation today now that I think about it, which I'll come to a little bit more in a bit. But basically, after speaking on college stages for about 7 years, I had been a film student in college. And that was really my jam for a long time, was making movies that had people say that, like, wow, I never thought about it like that before. And I had been a finalist in the Student Academy Awards for my senior film, which was basically run by the Academy Awards. So if I had won the Student Academy Awards, I would have been in the short film category of the Academy Awards. So close. But that I was always looking for, how do I tell stories that really move people and wake people up to what's possible? So after speaking for several years, I created different multimedia companies. One called Authentic World Media, which captured the work of an organization called the Authentic Man Program, that really taught the highest level of authentic relating in relationships. Just absolutely profound stuff. Really proud of the work that we did. And then I had another company called Evoca Media that was all about sex education for men, teaching men how to be multi-orgasmic and literally separate orgasm from ejaculation so they could have as many orgasms as they wanted in one night of lovemaking and only ejaculate if and when they wanted to. Which is great, because when it comes to world peace, if mama ain't happy, no one's happy. And then, after that, did lots of different things, lots of like really high level coaching and blogging and a whole thing around creating jewelry, which I still do. But in the last few years, what I really started to see was that I had the ability to tell someone's story far better than they ever could. And with my understanding of writing and speaking and storytelling, I found that there was an opportunity to work with people who are really here to make a contribution to the shift in consciousness on the planet and create speeches for them that intrigue and inspire and deeply move and touch people in a way that has them say, wow, I like that person. I feel their humanity. I get what they get, and it really touches something inside of me. And so I've created basically a 3-month program that I take people through, where I've got an entire team of accomplished writers, editors, comedians, human design experts. I've got a TEDx organizer who reviews the speech, to give like the final thumbs up. And it's just this very beautiful, intricate, and yet beautifully designed process that in the end has my clients feel as if I've created a custom designed Iron Man suit for them to be able to stand on stage and really feel that they can magnify the power of their truth for other people to really be able to see and receive and get. So the last part of that, I can go into more detail in that program if you want, but the last part is that what I'm really stepping into now is also working with CEOs of big companies. A lot of my clients want to speak at TEDx, which is great. But for people who are CEOs who really get that inevitably they are the brand of their company, how they speak, how they show up, what they say. Now I'm also working with CEOs to craft a speech that really captures who they are, why they're doing what they're doing, how they see their work in this company impacting the world in a positive way. And then we go out to whatever their most sacred spot is in nature on the planet, whether it's their own backyard or, out in the safari of Tanzania, and we record it there on beautiful, exquisite audio and video. And then that becomes a part of their social media as kind of just like the core piece that says, this is who I am and this is what I'm all about in the world. And working with them to be able to speak it just as if they were sitting on the couch in front of the fire with their best friends. So people really feel it. That's a little bit about what it's all evolved into today.
Yeah. The reason why I wanted to have you on the show is because I've never heard of anything like this. I've never heard of anyone creating such depth and bringing a team of so many experts to assist in this storytelling process. So it's super unique. And what I'm wondering about right now is, can this be applied beyond just speaking? Because it seems like what you're doing is really helping people understand themselves in a way.
Yeah, it can. When I do a program, there are definitely different tiers of it. The first tier is the whole discovery process, which involves a super deep dive interview that I do with them that goes 2 to 3 hours, a super deep dive interview with one of my experts I bring in who's a PhD, and she did her dissertation on what deeply moves people most about their work. And then also a human design expert who goes in and really explores how a person is best designed to speak about their work in the world. And what I find is that just that tier by itself helps anyone to deeply see and understand themselves on a whole other level, because what it really does is it takes all the stepping stones that we've traversed in our lives that bring us up to who we are now and illuminates them in a way that allows us to see what our path has been. It allows us to see where we came from, where we are, what got us there, and who life is designing us to be, regardless if someone ever does a speech with it or not. But I have heard from my clients that say, even if someone creates a speech that they don't even use for anything, clients have said that just the process has inspired so many other parts of their life and their business because they actually get who they are on a level that they never did before.
Yeah, I can see that. I guess it's one of the main human questions, like, who am I? Why am I here? Like, why am I here at this time? Like, what's this version of me like supposed to do? What's my destiny? All these questions. And it seems like this could provide a lot of context for people to understand some of those like big questions.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's a joy. It's a joy for me because I think I have been such a seeker in my own life to answer those questions for myself, that when I can take someone else through the process of answering those questions for them, it brings me so much joy. Yeah. And the other side of it I want to mention as well is that for someone who is here, who knows that it is completely necessary for them to speak about their work in order to move forward in the world, there's nothing more powerful than using our voice and our language to speak ourselves into the world. That's literally what creates who we are, by speaking ourselves into the world. And when you have a speech that is so perfectly aligned with your inner truth and your inner knowing and the complete sensory experience of your own nervous system and the truth that you hold there and speaking that into the world, it creates reality. I mean, that's the amazing thing about it. And I think that's what's so powerful about it as well. And I think for people who are here who know that this is their time, this is their opportunity to truly become who they were here to be, I think this is one of the most powerful and important vehicles a person could have, which is why I feel so passionate about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably we see most people fall into this camp of they're ready to be here, who they're supposed to be here.
Most people that I hang out with, but I don't know about most people.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so let's just assume listeners of this show
yes.
are on that path.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, that said, I mean, talk about the art of adventure. There's a lot of amazing adventures out there to be had, but honestly, in my world, what better adventure could you possibly have than speaking who you want to be into existence? Like, that provides for all the best adventures combined.
Yeah, I think on like a level of physics, it's really interesting because when you speak, you're like creating these vibrations. You're like creating something out of nothing. It's like, it's like a direct mirror of God, essentially, creating something out of nothing, speaking something. All of a sudden there was no sound and now there is sound, and you are the creator of that. So it's very powerful.
Yeah. I love how you said that. That's great.
Yeah. So, I mean, gosh, this is, I love how you're demonstrating, I think I've only spoken a couple of times, right? And you're holding me and the audience captivated with your telling of your own backstory. It's like, here you're doing what you're telling us that you're good at doing.
Nice. It's great to hear. For me, it's just having fun. Yeah. Like, I feel lit up and excited when I talk about these things. So for me, it's an indication, I should probably just talk about these things more. But I love getting that reflection.
So you have this, you said, this natural, like, empathetic sensitivity to you where you can feel other people, you can read a room really well. And you had all these skills from Super Camp. Those seem like they may be unique to you. And so I'm wondering, like, even if you create this amazing talk and do this process of the detailed interviews and writing the right speech for them, certainly there's some skills that they have to acquire in addition to be able to use that, like being able to read the audience and things like that?
Yes-ish. The thing is that for a long time, people have asked me, what do I need to do to be a great speaker? And ironically, the answer is not to add more things to who you are, but it's about letting go of more things in the way of who you are. So it's about being less concerned with the results. It's being less self-conscious about your appearance. It's being less distracted by trying to do it right. A lot of people think that a speech is, I share my perspective and the audience considers my opinion. And that's so not what a speech is. A speech is literally a conversation between nervous systems. And when someone speaks from the depth of their heart, from the depth of their truth, regardless of how refined or polished it is, the reptilian brain, which is one of the triune brains. We have 3 different parts to the brain, but the oldest part is the reptilian brain. And when the reptilian brain recognizes someone as a friend, then it literally allows information to be received that then goes down into the nervous system that we feel it. Until that time, it's literally a protection mechanism to keep people that aren't trustworthy out. And so when we speak from the depth of our nervous system, the reptilian brain instantly recognizes that and allows access into the nervous system of the people listening. And when that happens, that's when people say, oh, wow, this person feels like a friend. I trust this person. I like this person. I want to help this person. And so in that way, it's not about being the best, most proficient speaker in the world. It's about knowing how to speak from the deepest level of authenticity of yourself. And that's actually what makes some of the best speeches ever.
Love it. Yeah, that's super clear. Not the content, but the like how cleanly it can be transmitted. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So do you want to play a little bit?
Let's you said normally this deep dive you do is a couple hours, but I'd love to like sample a little bit of that.
Yeah. I'll just like pick a few questions from like the big marathon interviews that I do, and we'll just kind of explore a little bit just so you can kind of get a sense of how it applies.
Yeah, and so actually a little context, I'm my website is a couple years old, and I'm like thinking about redoing the website and the about page and all that stuff. So I'm going to try to use, if there's anything that comes up here, I'll be incorporating that into how I write and speak about what I do, which of course continues to evolve.
In fact, we can put this to the side, but I also do this system, I call it the rocket ship, and it's 4 very curated questions that are highly designed to give me very particular information that I then use to create basically the content that would go on the front page of your website. And it's very simple, but incredibly streamlined and poignant to speak to exactly who you are, who you serve, the problem that you serve, and why people should connect with you if this is what they're looking for. Let's bookmark that.
Okay. Yeah. That sounds super cool.
So the first question I have for you, Derek, is when you were a little boy, say maybe around the age of 6, what was something that you did that later on in life you or your family or your childhood friends would look back on and say, oh my gosh, that was so Derek to do?
So interestingly, we just met up with some elementary school teachers that I had.
Oh, wow.
And I had just had this phenomenally cool dream the night before. And I was like, let me tell you about this awesome dream I had. And they were like, you were just like this as a kid. You were always like, you found something interesting, whether it was like dinosaur or like whatever it is, weird stuff you were learning about, and you would come in and you couldn't wait to share it with the class. So that's, I was into, just like getting obsessed about whatever it is, rocks, dinosaurs, magic, and I would learn a bunch, and then I would go and try to talk people's ear about it.
Nice. Beautiful. Perfect example. And so how would you say that shows up in your life today?
I'm still doing it. I mean, I learned stuff from this podcast, from these interviews and all the books that I read. And one of the things that I really love is to distill down, right? 10 books, 10 interviews on, you were featured in my book, Superconductors, in the chapter on building strategic relationships. So I read like 20 books and did these 20 podcast interviews, and I tried to distill down like what somebody could really use to build the best network. Right. So I love immediately learning and then applying and teaching useful information.
Beautiful. So with that example, what I love about that question is that you can look at like, okay, here's who I was as a kid. Here's who I am now. And even though my tastes and my opinions, my perspectives, my view of the world has completely changed, you can go like, oh yeah, though, same person. Because the one thing about us that never changes is our essence. And you can very easily see what your essence is by looking at who you were as a child before the ego came in and started to try to look cool or limit ourselves or, try to fit in different ways. But when our natural essence was just coming through us and guiding us towards the things that we are most drawn to, that's who we are, because that's the part of us that never changes. And so it's really powerful as someone who is an influencer in the world, someone who has something that contributes to the world, to be able to have as a part of your message, I didn't just go to school and learn this. I've been doing this my entire life. And you have, Derek. Like the work that you're doing now, you have been doing your entire life. And that's what makes you an expert in your field.
Wow, that feels amazing. Yeah. That's super cool.
Right? Yeah. And we could go and explore this more and like find one particular story that really captures it. That's probably funny and endearing and, it's kind of cute. And then we could take that story and tie it directly to the work that you do today. And when you share a story like that, people are just like, oh, wow, I see it. Yeah, you are that kid. And because of that, in my nervous system, it's like, oh, yeah, I do trust you because I do get that you've been doing this your entire life. I do get that this is what is your natural essence. I do get that this is who you're here to be in the world. Of course, you're the person to lead this, to help people see this, to educate others in this way. It's a perfect example because you are doing exactly what your essence is here to do.
I'm thinking of like if you think about like a sales webinar or something like that, early on, you're supposed to establish why you're the person to be leading this thing and like build the connection with your audience that way. And it seems like this is perhaps like the cleanest way to do that.
Yep.
Rather than just being like, here's why I'm an expert, like all these people say I'm an expert. It's to like show them through this story about maybe your younger self. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense to me now. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Now, one caveat on that. Not everybody had a childhood where they felt safe enough to allow their essence to really come through. And in those situations, there's something else that arises. It's referred to as our island of resilience. And it's that part of ourselves that when we feel like we've been stripped of all of our resources, it rises up like this massive bubble from under the ocean, just like right up to the surface that basically says, all right, I'm taking control. I'm going to handle this. I'm going to get us through this. For some people, it might be being really productive. For some people, it might be being funny. For some people, it might be, handling everything for everybody else, or it might be their intelligence to get them through it. But whatever that is, whatever that part of ourselves that rises up to take care of us, to get us, to help us survive through that difficult time, that's also a very unique part of our essence that very likely shows up in who we are and how we navigate the world today, which is also a gift and directly ties to what we're here to do in the world.
That makes sense. Okay. Thanks for that.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Because it's important, because clearly, as much as I wish everybody had a great childhood, and I don't consider myself someone who had a great childhood, but there are these parts of ourselves that are so valuable, not just then, but also in the speaking of our mission in the world. So
I'm actually thinking of a speaker who I saw something on YouTube, but anyway, he like took his little brother out of South Sudan. They like ran away from their village being bombed.
Wow.
He was like 12 and his little brother was 8, and he had to like take him on this like thousands of mile journey to get to safety. And that was his backstory. And so it's like very, he had this island of resilience that allowed him to like basically lead his, his brother out of that situation.
Yeah. And do you have a sense of how that ability that arose shows up in his life today as a professional?
He's an activist. I think he's also a politician. I wish I could remember who this is. It's been a while, but yeah, it's like, it was a very clear line, between that strength and what he's doing now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Great example. Thank you. So let's move on to another question. So let's take this regarding the conversation we just had about your essence and what it has led you to in the world with your podcasts, with your different books, with the ways that you've been exploring yourself and the world and being on this adventure. Here's the question I have for you, and it's a 3-part sentence stem, and it goes like this. Most people think ... but what's really true is that ... and what I know in my heart is ...
Okay, so this is like generalizing, not necessarily about me, but just like my assessment of like what I think most people think.
Well, in regards to the work you're doing, like you've got your podcast, The Art of Adventure, you've got your different books on helping people kind of like, really navigate, and create in the world. So in regards to your body of work that you've been developing, which has its source from your natural essence as a child, most people think, but what's really true is that, and what I know in my heart is.
Okay. Most people think about my work.
Not what most people think about your work, but just out there in the world. Like you've discovered something, but here's what most people think. But what's really true is, and what I know in my heart is. Okay.
This is complicated because I'm always sort of re-understanding what most people think and what I know.
Do you want me to give you an example? Just, from my frame?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Most people think that their lives are far more limited than they really are. But what's really true is that as human beings, we can create anything we want. And what I know in my heart is that we have the ability to speak ourselves into reality to a degree that most people have rarely even touched.
Yeah, I like that. That's kind of similar to where I was going. Most people think that they have limitations based on their circumstance.
Oh, yeah?
But what's really true is that, we have 100% possibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is backed by science, which I find amazing. And I know in my heart that we are in the process right now of realizing that truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Beautiful. And so just from what it is that you've defined right there, it serves as a really beautiful kind of foundation for the context that you want to put out into the world with your work. It serves as the underlying through line of everything that you do. And so we can take that and make sure that if me and my team and I were creating a speech for you, now we would know, okay, this is the channel that it all moves through as it gets out into the world.
Yeah. So those questions, and I see they sort of represent the approach where I'll be like, can I acquire this ability, this skill that I don't have? And like, can I bring some new aspect into myself? And then, it's something that I end up teaching. So like, if I'm not consistently confident, and then all of a sudden, wow, I can just like add that to myself. I've like created that as part of my identity. Well, then everybody should be able to do that. It's like, it's this theme of like me being a guinea pig for like how to realize these things that I didn't know before, but now I understand, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Thank you. So let's move on to another question. Were you postulating something there?
I'm also like observing, paying attention to our interview, but also in the back of my mind, paying attention to like how this is useful for me as an entrepreneur.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I was saying before, even if someone doesn't necessarily want a speech, just going through the process of these questions, it distinguishes so much. The way I like to put it is that it's kind of like throwing dust on the invisible man. All of a sudden, that part of ourselves that we could never really see clearly, all of a sudden we can define its movements. We can see that it's got kind of a personality. We can see that it has a particular way that it likes to move. And the more we get to know that, the more we get to know ourselves. The more we get to know ourselves, the more we navigate the world in a way that opens up possibilities. So this is a big part of that.
Super cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next question I have for you is,
let's keep going.
Let's say The Art of Adventure and all of your books and your upcoming book just got bigger and bigger and bigger and impacted more and more and more people. What is the world that you envision as a result of your work and your message becoming more and more celebrated?
What is the world that I envision as my work grows and gets more celebrated?
Yeah. How does that impact the world in a way that makes this a better world that you would want to be a part of?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is that it's a huge relief for people to know that they're not limited to their current scope of their understanding of who they are. You know, wherever you are in terms of your skills and ability and your health and your business and all these things, like that is not, you're not bound by any of those limitations. It's like this huge relief knowing that you can have anything that you want. And then it takes us to this joyful place of like, let's see what we can do. Let's see who we can be. Let's see what we can create. And it becomes like a fun game rather than like a struggle and all this heaviness.
Yeah. And if the majority of the world was having that experience, what would the world be like?
The world would change really quick because people would just be like, oh man, wouldn't it be awesome if this was true? And then all of a sudden it was like that. Wouldn't it be awesome if we created this event? Or wouldn't it be awesome if we had this type of relationship? Or wouldn't it be awesome if I felt this way in my body? And then it was just like people get into all these barriers and things that like slow them down from actually like having the reality that they want. So what I see is that this would be a much cleaner approach to like, you don't have to go through all these hurdles and obstacles to get to the reality you actually want.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. And do you have a sense of how that would impact some of the problems the world is facing?
Well, they wouldn't be problems anymore.
Yeah,
it'd be like, I had this great analogy. It's like, you don't still worry about the problems you had in high school. It would be like that. It was like, oh, those aren't actually problems.
Right.
They would kind of dissipate.
Yeah. My sense is that, and I wrote down some of what you said. You said it would be a huge relief to feel not limited in the scope of who we are and not bound by limitations. And my sense is that if people were feeling not bound by limitations, meaning free to create themselves as who they not only are but want to be, then I think people would feel a lot more freedom and a lot more personal connection to the state of the world. And people would probably be a lot more involved in standing for the kind of world that they want to stand in because they've stood the kind of person that they want to be. It's like when our relationship with ourselves comes into alignment, we start caring a lot more about helping the rest of the world come into alignment as well. But when we feel totally out of alignment with ourselves, then we don't really care as much about the rest of the world being out of alignment because we don't feel that great about ourselves first. And to me, it seems like your work and what you're doing, having people really discover themselves in a way that really lights them up, is just the next step in having people care about the environment that sustains all of that. So I just want to reflect that back to you as like, that's how I see you. That's one of the ways that I see you making a difference in the evolution of the planet. Because until we're in relationship with ourselves, we're not going to care as much about being in relationship with the environment that sustains all of this.
And it's interesting that you say that because I'm motivated to, I spent a lot of time in the woods as a kid. I was a big environmentalist. I've been trying to figure out how I can work that into my work more. So it's interesting that you brought that up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the ways that I see it connected to that. Yeah. Yeah. When we are in right relationship with ourselves, the next thing is to be in right relationship with the environment that sustains ourselves and the people that we love. And I think it's a natural progression.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. Let's move on to another question. And by the way, I'm not like keeping track of time, so I'll just leave that with you.
I have a little bit more time. How
Okay.
many more questions? You want me to make this the last question?
I can. I have two more questions.
Okay, perfect. Two more questions.
Let's do this one. What is the speech that you're afraid to give?
The speech that I'm afraid to give would be like a comprehensive map of reality as I understand it.
Yeah. What's edgy for you about that?
That I think a lot of people in my life, like in particular, I'm thinking of my grandparents who I don't think listen to this podcast, but that people who are entrenched in any dogma or beliefs or anything like that would throw out probably a lot of these ideas, and it, would make me uncomfortable for people that I love to, dismiss many things that I've discovered.
Yeah. And let's say you were transported to another planet that's just like Earth, but all of the people that you're afraid of their judgment were back on Earth, and you were on this other planet with all of these other people kind of in the exact same situation. What would light you up most about giving this speech?
Again, I think it would be a huge relief for people. It's, like learning all the stuff that I've learned is a huge relief for me. And it connects so many dots, about these things like why we're here, how the universe works, how my mind works, like why I'm motivated to do the things I'm doing. Like, am I a good or bad person? Like all these questions, when you like look at all the underlying physics and mechanics and reasons about our universe being here at all, it's just like, oh, this is totally perfect. Like everything is just as it should be. I'm on the right path. It's just been such an eye-opening, like great self-acceptance for me that wouldn't it be great if everybody like realized that and got that too.
Wow. How does it feel for you in this moment just to share what you have so far about this concept?
Well, it's motivating for me to talk more about. I've spent the last year sort of processing like loads of information, and right now it feels like I'm ready to like start teaching and applying that part of the pattern where I like start getting out there.
Yeah, beautiful, man. For sake of time, we won't go much further into it, but this is so juicy, and it's juicy because it feels like all the work that you've been doing in your life is kind of leading up to exactly this. This is like episode, I think, number 304. I'm not trying to get you in trouble here, but I would not be surprised if some of your listeners were like, dude, I want to hear about this. And the reason I asked this question about this is because, it's about when we start to explore what is that thing that is on the edge of our comfort zone, or maybe even just past the edge of our comfort zone, that we really want to talk about, there's so much life and energy and potency in that. And that is almost always our seminal work in terms of what we've really come here to do.
That feels spot on too.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, that goes with what my work is. There's the speech you're giving, but what is the speech you're really here to give? If you've got just one life and you've got just one shot, what is it that you really want to say?
Yeah. And I can see how this process, if you were to say that at the beginning, like, what is it you really want to say? People might be like, oh gosh, like, I don't really know to uncover all of this. It's really exciting it's like when you go to a fortune teller and they like tell you something about yourself and you're like, yes, that's it. That's me. How did you know? It's like that kind of experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I believe so. That's definitely what has me feel so passionate about it, because I'm constantly on that journey for myself, but as part of being on that journey for myself, being with others on their journey in that way just keeps the party going. So that's probably a good place to wrap it. I like that as a as a sweet spot to bring it all together.
Yeah, I love that. Every time we talk, I'm like, I need to go through the whole process. And I'm imagining many listeners are also thinking like, wouldn't it be cool if I had this? So where can people learn more about your work, find you online, that kind of thing?
At this particular time, I've got a website. It's my name, garrisoncohen.com, GarrisonCohen.com. You can see more about my work there. At this moment in time, the webpage it feels old, and I've got a new one in process. But if you'd like to have a conversation, you can also just send me an email at garrison@watchmemanifest.com.
Cool. Which was from the jewelry that you created, as I recall.
Yeah, I had created a jewelry line of these sort of like, they almost looked like watches, but they were just sort of like these exquisite laser engraved on sort of gold mirror pieces that were actually designed to be sort of manifestation devices. But they look like watches. So it was watchmemanifest.com. Now I just use that as my email. I just do that for fun on the side.
Yeah. And is there anything that we haven't touched on that you think is important for the listener?
Gosh, let me see. I feel like we covered so much, and I'm sure after we wrap up, I'll think of 10 things. My work is simply in people who are here to make a difference on the planet, and for people who know that their lives are here to make an impact in a positive way. I'd love to talk with people who are up to things, and also, really excited about the work that I'm doing and moving into working with CEOs who know that the legacy of their company is dependent on the brand that they create and hold, and quite honestly transmit through who they are choosing to be. I feel really excited about the work that's emerging there. So,
super cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's all.
Garrison, well, it's been a pleasure having you on, and that was really helpful for me personally, and also really cool just to see like the power of these handful of questions and what they can do, and how they can provide the insight to creating how you talk about yourself.
Yeah, thank you. And just so you know, these are probably maybe 4 or 5 questions out of about 50. So you can imagine it goes pretty
Any
deep.
chance that you will release some of these questions in some way that a broader audience can access them?
It's a good question. I've thought about doing a group program at some point. I'm not there yet, but at some point it might be part of a group program where I work with a group of people all at once and lead them through the process. And these questions would be a part of that.
Yeah. Cool.
But for now, it's mostly just one-on-one work.
I want to challenge the listener. If you didn't write down these questions for yourself and answer them for yourself, which I imagine, people listening might have been doing, go back and see if you can answer them for yourself, these 5 that we went through, because it's just from where I am, it's cool to have that insight about yourself. So that's the homework challenge for the listener.
Great homework challenge. I love it. Well done. All
right. High five, Garrison.
High five. Boop.
Thanks, buddy.
There it is. All right. Thanks, Derek. That was great. See you later.
All right, another amazing episode with Garrison. He never fails to delight and entertain. Thanks for listening to the whole episode. And if you found this to be helpful or interesting, then your friends probably will too. So please share this with them on your social media, or show the person next to you what you just finished listening to. And if you want to keep track of all the best adventure stories, I'm doing this countdown this month. You can follow me on Instagram. I'll be doing an adventure story every day from the podcast. So my Instagram is @DerekLoudermilk. And for the next episode, we're going to be listening to Johannes Volkner, who is the creator of Nomad Cruise. It's a really unique, another totally unique business model. And we recorded it before the pandemic hit, so there may be some changes to that, but it's really fascinating to see how he found a need in the world of digital nomads, which is a fairly new sort of career type. And he created this series of cruises to bring this new community together. All right, that's all for today. Thanks so much for listening. Now it's your turn to go out there and be adventurous.